As I talked about earlier, we live in in a world where there's so much information being shared and communicated that can be very dizzying to manage everything. So this third objective is to help you get a better understanding of how to tap into the right sources of information to get the information that's going to be most relevant to making decisions. So this third objective is to know how the broader field of social work research is organized and accessed. We've already talked about journals as a primary vehicle for communicating scientific information within the field of social work. But let's talk about a few types of journals by the way that they're accessed. The first type, and this is going to be the majority of journals within the field, are subscription journals. These are the most common types of journals, including for social work specifically, but also science more broadly. And these journals require a subscription, a paid fee in order to access the content. And there's many barriers that this creates in making the scientific knowledge to the general public as well as professionals specifically. Obviously, you have to pay for the content, but the journal subscription fees can be very expensive, and it's cost prohibitive for a single individual to have many different subscriptions to journals. And so this is a problem that we recognize within the field. One thing to point out, though, is that the abstracts of the studies are almost always available for free. So we don't want to minimize the value of the abstracts. So even though you don't have a subscription to a journal, it's important that you are still aware that you can access abstracts for free and use some other methods and mechanisms for accessing the full text article. And in the later section of this course, you'll be exposed to some specific methods for conducting these searches and accessing the content. Right now, it's just important to be aware of the mechanisms for accessing the journal content. The other type of journal is what are considered open access journals. And these journals are supported by a completely different mechanism than the subscription journals. So the subscription journals rely on fees to support the publication process, whereas the open access journals, the authors pay a fee, and this has both its strengths and its limitations. For the strengths, it makes the open access journals, the content is freely available to anybody. So it doesn't matter who you are or where you are. It only matters that you have connection to the internet and you can have full free text access to all of the articles. But this type of mechanism has brought up very serious concerns about the quality of the journals. And this is what they're considered to be predatory open access publishing. So some of the journals have been considered to be predatory journals in the sense that they're more concerned about getting fees from authors rather than having a very legitimate and quality peer review process. So we don't have the list of journals that are considered predatory are always evolving and changing. So we can't provide a current list for you within this MOOC, but we do encourage you to be aware of some of the articles on predatory open access publishing and trying to avoid those journals as a source of information. And this raises the question, too, of what are the best journals that you should be following in the field? When you start to search for journals and look at what are considered to be quality journals, you may come across what are called journal impact ratings. And journal impact ratings provide a metric for comparing what would be considered to be the impact of journals in the field. But the impact factors may not be relevant or even all applicable to the information needs of a service provider. They're very important within an academic setting, but they do have concerns about their validity. So they do have relevance, but again, it may not be relevant for your information needs. The issue for determining what are the best journals is really a complicated process. Most importantly, what you should do is become aware of the content of as many social work journals and related journals in your given area, and to read them widely and to assess each article as well as the overall content on its own merit. You can talk with other professionals in your field, in your area of expertise on what they consider to be quality journals. You could also attend conferences and connect with professional societies and organizations to get a better understanding of the journals that you should be following. And sometimes professional societies do provide their own journal, which also makes it easier for determining whether or not it will be relevant to the work that you do. But visiting each website of the journals is going to be very inefficient. So academic databases are another mechanism for accessing the content. But the accessing the content of the journals, again, is going to be limited by subscriptions, and academic databases also fall into that category. If you're affiliated with a college or a university, most likely you have a wide accessibility to both the journals and academic databases, where accessing the content isn't really that much of a concern. But if you're outside of an academic setting, it's going to be much more difficult. So here we just want to make you aware of some of the academic databases that will make searching journal content much easier. PsycInfo, Social Work Abstracts, Social Services Abstract, and PubMed. These are some example databases that can be used for searching journal content. PubMed is a health-focused database, and I want to make that I want to highlight this particular database because this is one that's freely available throughout the world, and you could also conduct searches of PubMed to identify articles that are also freely available. So PubMed is a good starting point for learning about the databases that index the journal content. And again, I mentioned some professional societies and organizations as a way of helping identify the research that would be relevant for you. Here are 3 examples of the major social work organizations that may contribute to work of social work and social work research, but this is by no means comprehensive. These are considered some of the major organizations. And in the resources section of this MOOC, we provide a list of other organizations that may be relevant to the work that you do. And finally, I want to make a comment on another method or a mechanism that is used for communicating scientific information, and this is called scientific journalism. And this is sort of the interface between the science and the public, where we have a journalist that reviews the content of scientific findings and makes it available and to the general public in a way that's much more accessible than what you would find in a scientific article. Here are just a few examples of studies that have been reported in a journalistic fashion. And you can see that, so these articles all focus on the issues of depression. For example, using Facebook actually makes you feel depressed, research says. Another study, they found that children who get their fingers slammed indoors may have lifelong issues of including depression. Just 1 hour of exercise a week may help prevent depression. And eating magic mushrooms can treat depression, a study finds. Scientific journalism is a very important part of the scientific process because it allows a way for complex and important findings to be communicated to the general public. However, there are very serious limitations of the process. As we see from the prior slide, some of the findings can be sensationalized, and we may be the scientific journalists may be reporting on topics that are interesting rather than useful. They may make mistakes in what is reported in order to capture the audience. So there's a lot of important contributions that scientific journalists make, but there's also problems that they can introduce to our knowledge of various phenomenon. So when you come across some of these studies, it's very important that you apply the skills in this course for becoming very good consumers of this research. And in this way, you could help advance the idea of scientific journalism by helping correct problems that are being shared or are going along with the scientific journalists. And a few things that you could do is to locate and appraise the original research. So you never want to rely exclusively on the articles that are provided by the journalist, but you want to use your skills to identify where the original research was published and see if you can access and appraise that independently. So a good scientific journalist will provide who conducted the study, where the study was conducted, and where the actual study was published. And with these details, you should be able to find that original research. So at this point, I hope that you have an idea of how the broader field of social work research is organized, and you could use this knowledge as a way of more efficiently and effectively getting at the information you need to inform your decisions. In subsequent modules, you're going to be provided with more detailed information on appraising research, and these are going to be critical skills in this process.